America runs on stories. Some true, many profitable. In this video, we rip open 101 facts that sold wars, built brands, and hijacked textbooks. Some are funny, some are ugly, all fooled millions. If a teacher, ad, or headline ever hardwired your memory, time to uninstall the update. 1. In 1835, the New York Sun, sold out by promising telescopes, had spotted Gothic temples and bat-winged moon people. Whole city went star-crazy while printers cranked out science. The truth? A pure publicity stunt. No telescope, no Batman, just America's first viral clickbait. 2. You've heard the legend that Orson Welles caused nationwide hysteria with his War of the Worlds broadcast. Fun twist. The mass panic story is mostly a newspaper revenge campaign against radio. Real panic was patchy and tiny. The bigger stampede happened in headlines the next morning. 3. New Yorkers once woke to a front-page scoop that jaguars, rhinos, and a polar bear had escaped the Central Park Zoo and were mauling people. Citizens grabbed rifles, schools shut. At the bottom of the column, a tiny confession. This is a hoax. Journalism. Meat jump scare. 4. America paid to see a 10-foot petrified giant unearthed in a New York field in 1869. Ministers preached about it. Scientists argued. Then the carver admitted he'd soaked a gypsum statue in acid and buried it for laughs. P.T. Barnum even built a counterfeit of the counterfeit. 5. California historians celebrated a brass plate left by Sir Francis Drake that somehow looked fresh off a hobby store shelf. For 40 years, it was displayed like holy relic. Metallurgy finally said, "Guys, modern." Turned out to be an inside prank that got way out of hand. 6. An American columnist convinced the country the bathtub was once illegal here until 1842, when a brave president installed the first patriotic tub. Professors cited it. Newspapers reprinted it. Years later, he confessed he made up every word. The lie took a longer soak than truth. 7. In 1964, Washington announced North Vietnamese boats launched a second attack in the Gulf of Tonkin. Congress roared approval, the war exploded, and later documents showed that second attack was murky at best, non-existent at worst. A fuzzy blip became a blank check. 8. In 1990, a tearful girl told Congress Iraqi troops yanked babies from incubators. Cable news looped it. America's blood boiled. Later, we learned she was the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, coached by a PR firm, and the story could not be verified. Perfect television, disastrous truth. 9. In 1994, 7 tobacco CEOs raised their right hands in Congress and swore nicotine isn't addictive. Ads had already paraded doctors recommending smokes. Internal memos later showed the companies knew exactly what nicotine did. The courtroom line was theater, and the audience was us. 10. School posters swear Betsy Ross stitched the first American flag in a heroic weekend craft session. Charming story. The problem is documentation arrives a century later from her grandson. No records from the era confirm it. Great upholstery, maybe. National origin myth, definitely. 11. Remember the Maine, sold a war. Newspapers thundered that Spain blew up a peaceful ship in Havana. The true cause remains disputed to this day. What isn't disputed is how the headline became a canon. Certainty on page 1 did the work that evidence couldn't. 12. Roswell wasn't aliens, it was paperwork. The Army first called it a flying disc, then pivoted to weather balloon, then decades later admitted Project Mogul's spy balloons were buzzing around. The cover story spawned a bigger myth than The Secret ever did. Congratulations, you invented eternal clickbait. 13. Government doctors told black men in Alabama they were receiving free treatment. They were subjects in the Tuskegee syphilis study and were deliberately left untreated for years. No punchline, just a lie with a body count. When a whistle finally blew, trust was already scorched earth. 14. The satanic daycare panic swore preschools hid secret cults, underground tunnels, and midnight rituals. Investigations found 0 sacrificial dungeons, a lot of coerced testimony, and ruined lives. America held 1,000 exorcisms for problems that didn't exist. Turns out the devil's favorite trick is daytime TV. 15. In the 1990s, the super predator theory labeled kids as remorseless mini Terminators destined for ultraviolence. Legislatures toughened laws. Then crime dropped, and the data buried the prophecy. The only thing super about it was how super fast adults believed a scary new word in a journal article. 16. Crack babies were predicted to be a lost generation, brain damaged, uneducable, doomed. Long-term studies later found poverty and environment were the real drivers, not a single prenatal exposure. Media ran with a tragic headline. Science eventually walked it back. The kids needed help, not a curse. 17. DARE promised a Just Say No force field. The program marched into schools with t-shirts and mascots and left with kids who used drugs at about the same rate. Meta-analyses shrugged. But hey, nothing says prevention like a red ribbon and a very confident lion. 18. Big Sugar quietly paid Harvard scientists to point fingers at fat, while sugar whistled innocently in the corner. The papers looked authoritative. The conflicts of interest looked like a dessert menu. Decades later, we learned the sweetest ingredient was funding. Spoiler, the footnotes were caramelized. 19. When workers started hallucinating and dying at an ethyl gasoline plant, executives insisted tetraethyl lead was safe. They nicknamed the building the Looney Gas House and kept pouring. The lie floated straight into children's bloodstreams and city air. Genius invention, catastrophic chapter, breathtaking spin. 20. Chinese restaurant syndrome told Americans that monosodium glutamate caused headaches and doom. It started with one letter, snowballed into a racist urban legend, and survived decades of controlled studies saying, relax. MSG is just umami doing its job. The real problem was the seasoning on the story. 21. The McDonald's hot coffee case was framed as a greedy lady clumsy with a latte. Trial evidence showed near-boiling coffee, hundreds of prior burn complaints, and third-degree injuries that required skin grafts. The jury didn't buy the punchline. America, meet tort reform's favorite bedtime fable. 22. The Untouchables myth says Elliot Ness personally outwitted Al Capone into prison with a fedora and a catchphrase. In reality, tax attorneys and accountants did most of the damage while Ness played a smaller, noisier role. Capone wasn't felled by gunfights. He was itemized. 23. Thomas Edison is credited with inventing the light bulb in a single thunderclap. Before him came decades of tinkerers, and beside him stood a lab of engineers. Edison's true superpower was iteration, patents, and marketing. America didn't just buy a product, it bought a founder's cutscene. 24. Lincoln freed the slaves is tidy. The Emancipation Proclamation was messier. It freed people in rebel states, not in loyal border states, and freedom often arrived behind Union bayonets months later. The 13th Amendment finished the job. History hates nuance. Politics lives on it. 25. Corporate personhood is often pinned on a Supreme Court decision that supposedly declared, corporations are people. The line lives in a headnote written by a court reporter, not in the opinion itself. The doctrine evolved elsewhere. The misquote became legend. The footnote became the headline. 26. George Washington's I cannot tell a lie, cherry tree confession? Pure marketing from a biographer who needed wholesome content before TikTok existed. No witnesses, no stump, no timber morals. America's most famous honesty lesson is, hilariously, a lie about honesty that stuck like sap. 27. The Twinkie defense never argued sugar made a killer snap. It argued depression, with junk food habits as a symptom. Headlines turned it into cupcakes made me do it, because that's spicier at dinner. A tragic case got shrink-wrapped into a snack joke and shipped nationwide. 28. Every October, parents fear razor blades and candy from mysterious strangers. Data says most scares were hoaxes, copycats, or a terrible relative, not a neighborhood supervillain. Urban legend plus local news equals seasonal ratings. The real danger was always your cousin with a chemistry set. 29. The Wild West was supposedly wall-to-wall gunfights at high noon. In reality, towns like Tombstone had strict gun control, and homicide rates often dropped after city limits. Dime novels and Hollywood needed non-stop shootouts. Actual cowboys needed boring chores and vaccinations. Myth? Loud. History? Dusty. 30. Paul Revere didn't gallop through Boston screaming, "The British are coming." Colonists were British. He quietly warned that regulars were marching, and he wasn't alone. Dawes and Prescott rode too. A poem turned a group chat into a solo performance with reverb, fog machine, and hero lighting. 31. The Liberty Bell ringing out on July 4th, 1776? Cute postcard. The public reading came days later, and the famous crack likely worsened long after the Revolution. The bell's biggest talent is branding. It tolls for our love of tidy origin stories with dramatic sound design. 32. Plymouth Rock wasn't the exact landing GPS pin. The "this rock was it" claim shows up in 1741 when Elder Thomas Faunce pointed at it from memory. The 19th century turned it into a shrine, moved, cracked, fenced, branded. The Pilgrims got myth. The boulder got a merch line. 33. The first Thanksgiving wasn't a Norman Rockwell buffet with turkeys, pumpkin pie, and buckle hats. It was a days-long harvest gathering with much weirder menu options and even weirder politics. The postcard version arrived centuries later, factory-sealed for classrooms. History got cranberry sauced into a can. 34. Pocahontas didn't stage dive into history to save John Smith like a Disney stunt performer. Smith's rescue tale appeared years later, conveniently starring himself. Real Pocahontas lived a hard, political, tragically short life. The lie gave us romance. The truth gives us a mirror, and it's not flattering. 35. Pilgrims came for religious freedom, for themselves. Dissenters in their towns learned that freedom had a dress code and a court date. The brochure said liberty. The fine print said conformity. America kept the headline and misplaced the asterisk for, about 400 years. 36. Cowboys in movies are almost uniformly white. Real cattle drives had large numbers of black cowboys and vaqueros from Mexico doing the same brutal, skilled work. Hollywood cut them from the panorama and sold a monochrome myth. The West was bigger and browner than the poster admits. 37. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Sounds ancient and scientific. It's modern and sponsored. Cereal magnates and clever publicists blended moral panic with sugar and called it wellness. Eat when you're hungry, not when a cartoon rooster rings a school bell in your skull. 38. The food pyramid looked like nutrition but behaved like a lobby map. Grains got prime real estate. Fats were exiled like villains. Later versions quietly changed because evidence did. The early chart's biggest nutrient was influence. It fed confusion generously with seconds. 39. Peter Popoff wowed stadiums by hearing God reveal private ailments. Skeptics found an earpiece and a wife reading prayer cards over radio. Miracles had a frequency. When the transmitter turned off, prophecy got shy. Faith survived. His microphones still needed batteries. 40. Radium tonics promised pep, youth, glow. Very literal glow. Radithor sold radioactive water as health until a wealthy golfer's bones disintegrated in the press. The label said vitality. The half-life said otherwise. America learned the hard way that not every bright idea belongs in a teacup. 41. Shoe stores once put your feet in X-ray machines for fit. Clerks and kids got repeated doses so toes could look cinematic. The signage said family fun. The dose meters later said maybe not. Science advanced. The machines retired to the Museum of Terrible Marketing. 42. J. Edgar Hoover insisted the mafia didn't exist, while crime reporters and mob funerals said hello loudly. Raids finally crashed the party after wiretaps made denial impossible. For years, the Bureau chased radicals and pretended Omerta was a rumor. The nation's top detective mislaid a whole syndicate. 43. The fall of streetcars wasn't pure consumer choice. A consortium, National City Lines tied to GM, Firestone, and Standard Oil, bought systems and converted many to buses. They were convicted in 1949 on a narrow antitrust charge over parts bus sales. Historians still debate the overall impact. Asphalt had help. 44. Senator McCarthy waved changing lists of alleged communists like a magician with infinite scarves. The numbers shifted. The evidence rarely showed. Careers died. The proof often didn't show up to the funeral. Fear did all the heavy lifting while facts sat in the hallway without a pass. 45. The Lost Cause story says the Civil War was about anything but slavery. Etiquette, sovereignty, vibes. Confederate documents said otherwise in plain ink. After the war, a PR campaign rebranded defeat into chivalry and planted statues like lawn gnomes. The myth outlived the uniforms. 46. The 3/5. Compromise gets taught as, they thought black people were 3/5 human. The clause was a brutal apportionment hack to boost slave states' power in Congress. Dehumanizing, yes, but math, not metaphysics. The lie hides how cleverly oppression can be engineered with fractions. 47. Japanese-American incarceration was sold as national security. Government records later showed hysteria and racism doing the steering, not intelligence. Families lost homes behind barbed wire, while officials claimed necessity. Decades later, a formal apology finally arrived. Late postage on a very expensive lie. 48. Backmasking panic warned that rock records hid satanic commands you'd obey subconsciously. Parents spun vinyl backward and heard infernal smoothies. Controlled tests found imagination with reverb. If hell wanted recruits, it probably wouldn't require you to manually reverse your turntable at 2 in the morning. 49. Y2K was a hoax, is the laziest rewrite. Thousands of engineers spent years fixing code so the lights stayed on when the calendar rolled. Nothing exploded, and that was the point. We avoided disaster, then roasted the fire brigade for the absence of flames. Classic. 50. General Motors didn't invent the car, and Henry Ford didn't either. He industrialized it with assembly lines, wages that could buy the product, and world-class hype. America turned one industrialist into a folk inventor because singular geniuses sell better than teams in greasy aprons. 51. The "we only use 10% of our brain" claim lets every self-help product promise to unlock secret mental basements. Neuroscience says your brain is not an abandoned mall. It's a power-hungry organ working constantly. The only thing underutilized is our skepticism when a guru smiles. 52. The clean coal fairy tale suggests a mineral can be rugged, cheap, and tidy if you add enough adjectives. Reality keeps coughing. Capture tech exists. Economics and physics keep writing awkward emails. Coal's best PR move is a rebrand to historic carbon and an elegant exit. 53. Prohibition is remembered as a roaring, jazzy failure that made everyone drink more. In truth, alcohol consumption initially fell hard, organized crime ballooned, and the government's own denaturing program poisoned bootleg supplies while officials shrugged. The lie? It was harmless fun. The reality? A public health hangover. 54. The Great American Streetcar Scandal already set the stage, but add this. Highways were sold as congestion cures that always work. Induced demand says otherwise. Wider roads invite more cars until traffic returns like a bad sequel. Asphalt promised freedom. Physics sent an invoice with late fees. 55. The crusade against self-abuse didn't just invent bland breakfasts once. In the 1830s, reformer Sylvester Graham pushed austere crackers to calm desire. Decades later, John Harvey Kellogg promoted plain cornflakes for similar reasons. Different men, different eras, same flavor of moral cereal. 56. Theranos can run hundreds of tests from a single drop, seduced investors, media, and a boardroom full of famous last names. Labs are messy. The box was mostly theater. The startup worshipped disruption. The machine disrupted trust. The black turtleneck wasn't the only costume on stage. 57. The Balloon Boy saga told us a 6-year-old was floating to his doom over Colorado. News helicopters chased a silver UFO. The boy was hiding in the attic. Parents had engineered the drama for a reality TV pitch. America watched a blimp. The truth watched from a box. 58. Reefer madness sold America on marijuana as instant insanity. Murder, madness, moral collapse. Federal crusaders pushed the myth, theaters ran the scare film, and Congress got the Marijuana Tax Act. Science later rolled its eyes. The panic was a policy tool dressed as a public service. 59. The GMOs are inherently poisonous mantra, and the GMOs are magic with zero risk slogan are dueling billboards. The truth sits in the peer-reviewed middle, trait by trait, crop by crop. But absolutists sell better than nuance. If you hear certainty at full volume, check who paid for the megaphone. 60. If you can't make it here, you're not trying. The American Dream pep talk ignores redlining, nepotism, and a lottery of zip codes. Motivation matters, scaffolding matters more. The lie flatters winners and blames losers. The truth is infrastructure with a sense of humor and a budget. 61. Columbus proved the Earth was round is the cutest classroom myth. Mariners already knew the planet was a sphere. The actual debate was about distances. Columbus lowballed the size, got very lucky with continents in the way, and later PR turned a math error into galaxy brain genius. 62. Witches were burned at Salem is imported drama. In Massachusetts, accused women and men were hanged, and one man was pressed to death under stones. Burning happened in parts of Europe. America rewrote the method to make the nightmare feel more medieval and less local. 63. Chicago's Great Fire was blamed on Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicking a lantern. The reporter admitted he made it up, and the city kept repeating it because scapegoats are easier than urban planning. The real fuel was wooden buildings, dry weather, and a wind that would not quit. 64. Benjamin Franklin did not learn electricity by flying a kite into Zeus's mouth. He already studied electricity. The kite tale was likely a careful, grounded experiment later juiced by storytellers. The man was a polymath. He did not audition for a lightning-based Darwin Award. 65. Millions watched a live television special to open Al Capone's vault. The vault was empty. Geraldo Rivera found dirt, a broken bottle, and a new verb for national anticlimax. America tuned in for treasure and got a cultural X-ray of our optimism, gently bumping into reality. 66. The welfare queen of political legend was painted as a luxury car-driving benefits fraud representing millions. The real story was an extreme outlier packaged for fear. A single caricature became policy fuel. The lie worked because outrage needs one face, not spreadsheets. 67. In 2003, officials spoke in thunderclaps about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The stockpiles never appeared. Inspectors kept reporting smoke without fire. The war went on anyway. We learned that certainty on television can bulldoze uncertainty in reports, and the bill arrives in lives. 68. Purdue Pharma sold doctors a fairy tale that opioid addiction was rare when prescribed for pain. Training packets hummed with reassurances, and a manufactured 1% figure toured the country. The result was a slow-motion catastrophe marketed as compassion, with bonus pens for the prescribers. 69. For decades, industry voices waved off asbestos concerns as hysteria, even as workers coughed. The fiber's heat resistance was real. The safety wasn't. Courts later filled with mesothelioma cases like a grim ledger. The lie wore a hard hat and carried a clipboard. 70. The military told returning Vietnam veterans that Agent Orange posed minimal risk. Years later came diagnoses, declassified memos, and a belated benefits maze. The jungle fog was herbicide. The public fog was messaging. When evidence finally cleared, too many chairs at kitchen tables were empty. 71. New York tabloids convicted the Central Park Five in real time, calling them a wolf pack. Years later, DNA and a confession exonerated them. The correction could not rewind the damage. The The lie proved how fast headlines can outrun facts and how long apologies take to catch up. 72. The model minority myth flatters and erases at the same time, claiming Asian Americans succeed because culture, not because of grinding work plus wildly different histories. It's used to minimize racism and to pit communities against each other. A stereotype wearing a graduation cap is still a stereotype. 73. 40 acres and a mule was understood as a promise. For most freed families, it became a rumor with a return address. Land briefly allocated was quickly clawed back. Generational wealth did not vanish by accident. Bureaucracy escorted it out the door and locked it. 74. Homestead Act pamphlets sold free and fair land to anyone with grit. In practice, prime tracts flowed to railroads and speculators, and native nations paid the real price. America loves a lottery story where the winners are described as self-made and the rules are off-screen. 75. The Golden Spike photo tells you the railroad united a nation through pluck. Whole crews of Chinese workers who blasted mountains and laid track at breakneck speed were cropped out of the hero shot and most textbooks. The erasure was not an accident. It was casting. 76. Remember the Alamo paints a clean saga of liberty. Slavery, land ambition, and complicated Mexican politics get trimmed off like fat. The myth has perfect lighting. The history has receipts. Patriotism loves a single sentence. Reality sprawls across footnotes and border maps. 77. The missile gap in 1960 was campaign rocket fuel. Intelligence later showed the gap tilted the other way. We got a new bomber program, new slogans, and a nervous country shopping for fallout shelters. The lie was aerodynamic, sleek, fast, and designed to win debates. 78. The domino theory claimed if one nation fell to communism, the continent would topple in choreographed unison. History refused to dance that routine. Ideas are messy, not tiles. But the metaphor was irresistible, and metaphors do not bleed in committee hearings. 79. You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war is the perfect William Randolph Hearst quote because it is probably apocryphal. It sticks because it explains a truth. Newspapers can whip up storms. The line is likely a lie about a liar's power, which is very on-brand. 80. The gun that won the West tagline turned the Colt revolver into a lone hero. Westward expansion depended more on government policy, railroads, and disease than six-shooters. Marketing reduced a continent to a belt holster because a clean prop sells better than a messy system. 81. The frontier story uses empty land, like a stage direction. It was not empty. It was mapped, owned, farmed, hunted, and sacred. Manifest destiny sounded like destiny. It was policy, power, and paperwork with a halo glued on top. 82. Separate but equal was a lawyerly lullaby for segregation, promising parity with a wink. Equal never showed up. Budgets told on themselves, and facilities told louder. The doctrine died in court, but the lie still haunts school district lines and property tax maps. 83. Light cigarettes were sold as a softer, safer glide path. Smokers just inhaled deeper through ventilation holes. Internal documents later spelled it out. The filter did not filter your risk. It filtered the guilt long enough to ring the register. 84. Margarine with partially hydrogenated oils was marketed as heart smart, while trans fats did their quiet cardio on arteries. Labels bragged about the absence of butter, while the chemistry did laps. Later, science pulled the fire alarm and the aisle quietly rebranded. 85. Millions still believe the moon landing was filmed on a soundstage. The hoax story is the lie that will not die, fed by misunderstanding shadows and a deep love of secret explanations. If studio lights did that, someone forgot to pay the dust budget on the Sea of Tranquility. 86. Show me the birth certificate became a national hobby directed at a sitting president. Courts, documents, and newspapers confirmed the obvious. The rumor outlived the proof. Birtherism was a conspiracy theory with better marketing than manners. 87. Pizzagate turned a family restaurant into a war room in online imaginations. Then, a man arrived with a rifle to investigate. No basement, no ring. Just a weaponized fairy tale that showed how fast pixels can become plywood and police tape. 88. QAnon promised a secret plan, hidden messages, and a coming storm. It delivered broken families, violence, and a new dictionary for nonsense. The plot kept moving the goalposts because that is how you keep subscribers. Reality never had a chance to catch up to the next drop. 89. Vaccines causing autism started with a fraudulent paper, media megaphones, and 1,000 misread anecdotes. Study after study hammered it shut. The lie still tours playgrounds like a washed-up band playing the old hits to smaller and more dangerous crowds. 90. Climate change is a hoax. Gave people a comfy couch while the house warmed. Oil memos knew decades ago. The campaign to sow doubt paid better than admitting physics. The weather does not negotiate with talking points. Thermometers do not watch cable news. 91. The chasing arrows symbol trained Americans to believe any plastic with a number would be reborn as a park bench. Many were never economically recyclable. The logo was industrial sleight of hand that outsourced guilt to your kitchen bin, while landfills handled the fine print. 92. Keep America Beautiful scolded you for tossing a bottle while the companies making billions off disposable packaging hid behind a single crying actor. Littering is bad. Systemic design is bigger. The campaign's genius was changing the subject without changing the products. 93. Daylight. Saving time was pitched as an energy saver. Modern studies show tiny savings or even increases depending on where you live. What it definitely saves is golf daylight and retail sales. Twice a year, the country jet lags itself for a myth with a nice watch. 94. American classrooms crowned Franklin, Edison, and a handful of founders as solo inventors of everything. Real innovation was teams, rivals, and global borrowing. The lone genius myth sells posters. The workshop smells like coffee, solder, arguments, and 20 names on a patent. 95. Cowboys and native nations are shown as permanent enemies in a never-ending shootout. The real story includes trade, treaties, intermarriage, and alliances, followed by betrayals in Washington. The myth needs two costumes. History insists on a cast list and a very complicated script. 96. The National Security Agency does not collect data on Americans, sounded definitive until leaks showed bulk collection programs vacuuming metadata. The word games were artful. The databases were even more so. Trust took a number and waited a long time in the lobby. 97. For years, the FBI denied programs to disrupt domestic political groups. Then, activists broke into an office and the COINTEL profiles spilled out. The Bureau had been busy with blackmail letters and provocations while saying, "Nothing to see." The truth came out in photocopies. 98. The Pentagon Papers revealed officials privately saw Vietnam as a quagmire while publicly selling progress. The documents did not just expose policy, they exposed a habit. In Washington, optimism can be a uniform you wear to work while the memo in your briefcase begs to differ. 99. George Washington had wooden teeth is a splintery legend. He wore dentures made from ivory, metal, and teeth purchased from the enslaved. The lie protects us from the ugliness of ownership by replacing it with a cute craft project. 100. Trickle-down economics pays for itself, keeps returning like a tax season boomerang. Empirical results repeatedly show revenue holes and inequality spikes. The promise is gravity in reverse. Money goes up and somehow showers down. The reality is damp socks and a bigger umbrella for the penthouse. 101. The Founders as a unanimous marble chorus is a museum diorama. They fought, bartered, compromised, and punted hard problems to the future. The lie says America was born perfect. The truth says it was born argumentative, and every generation gets to decide whether to repeat the lie or improve the draft. Your move. Name one lie that should stay in textbooks because it's too entertaining to kill, or defend a myth I slandered. Bring receipts. I'm pinning the spiciest take. If we cracked even one favorite, hit like. For the next 101, subscribe. Now let's see who can outmyth who in the comments.